Thank
All
you.
right. This is a regular monthly meeting of the Princeton Historic Preservation Commission being held electronically via Zoom on February 22nd at 2021 at 4 p.m. Pursuant to Section 13 of the Open Public Meetings Act, adequate notice of the time and place and agenda of this meeting has been noticed by transmitting a copy to the Princeton Packet, Town Topics, the Times, Trentonian, and by filing a copy with the clerk of Princeton, who has posted it to the municipal website, www.princetonnj.gov/meetings. Pursuant to Executive Order 107, due to the state of emergency in New Jersey regarding COVID-19 coronavirus, notice that during the declared state of emergency, all regular and special meetings of the Princeton Historic Preservation Commission will be held electronically via Zoom. Such notices have been placed on the official bulletin board at the municipal complex and on the Princeton website and are to be maintained throughout the year. All right. So Elizabeth, do you want to do the roll call?
Yes. Ms. Capizzoli,
I'm here.
Mr. Endersby, noted as absent. Ms. Satterfield, also noted as absent. Mr. Shore,
Here.
Mr. Shatskin,
Here.
Ms. Campbell, also noted as absent. Ms. DeSanzo, Carrie, could you put your voice on the audio?
Sorry, here. Can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you. Ms. Howard? Frida, you're muted.
I'm here.
Thank you. And Mr. Pyle?
Here, happy Washington's birthday, speaking of history.
Thank you. So let's see, Elizabeth, do you have any special announcements?
I do not.
Okay. So our first order of business is to look at the resolution for 3537 South Harrison Street. And I know that there are neighbors that would like to make a statement, but before they do, Ed, are you able, can you explain that this resolution is memorializing what already happened and we can't change what happened?
That's correct, Madam Chair. The board, as you know, at the last meeting, conducted a hearing on the historic preservation plan presented for the duplex home at this property located on the Harrison Street South. And following that presentation, the board, subject to a series of conditions, approved the application. So this evening, the practice is the next meeting, we write up that approval in the form of what's called a resolution of memorialization. And it sets forth the board's findings and conclusions, and also the conditions. The board reviews that, and if we got it right, then you vote to approve the resolution. So if there are folks that want to comment about the resolution, I guess, we would certainly give them an opportunity to do that since they're part of the public. But this is not a rehearing of the application. The application has been heard and it's been approved. And if any of the neighbors or any interested party was dissatisfied with that approval, then the next process under our historic preservation ordinance would be to file an appeal of your approval of the application within 10 days to the Princeton Zoning Board of Adjustment. And then they would make arguments before the board about why your approval should not be upheld. So as a courtesy to those who have an interest in the application, we don't see anything wrong about entertaining some comments, but I think the board has to understand that you've already decided this matter And if the resolution is accurate, then you would take action to approve. And then those interested in the application could move forward with an appeal if they choose to do that.
Okay. So, Elizabeth, did you want to bring the,
Neighbor?
yeah,
Yes. Okay. I note that Martha is there. She has her hand raised. So Martha, we are going to move you into a panelist. So you might be blacked out for a minute, but then you'll come back on.
Hi.
hi. So
Good.
this is your opportunity to make a statement. I hope you got to hear Ed say what he said about the resolution.
We did. Thank you
Okay.
very much. Okay, I'm going to read for a few minutes. So, good afternoon, and thank you very much for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Martha Reinhardt, and my husband, Charles Wampold, and I live at 41 South Harrison Street. We respectfully request that the HPC table the resolution relating to the redevelopment plan for 35 Harrison Street because the plan runs afoul of the Princeton Shade Tree Ordinance as amended last summer, and the plan is effectively not permissible because it would critically endanger a historic 185-year-old sycamore tree located on our property. The tree, which is within 5 feet of the southern boundary of 35 Harrison Street, has a diameter of 52 inches, and a circumference greater than 13.5 feet. It is a significant tree within the meaning of the Shade Tree Ordinance and is therefore entitled to the highest degree of protection under the ordinance. Indeed, after last month's HPC meeting, the municipal arborist, Taylor Zaputer, notified the zoning and engineering departments that no construction shall be permitted on 35 Harrison Street until the developer submits and Mr. Zaputer approves an adequate tree protection plan. Following Mr. Zaputer's actions and at his suggestion, we engaged Mr. Robert Wells to analyze the matter further. Mr. Wells is a well-respected board-certified master arborist who has served as a consultant to the municipality in the past. Mr. Wells's 12-page report concludes that ideally no construction activity should be permitted within 40 feet of the southeast corner of 35 Harrison Street. And at a bare minimum, there should be no construction activity within 25 feet. As the developer's plan is to excavate extensively within the 25-foot radius, and in fact to put both a driveway and a new structure there, it is for all intents and purposes foreclosed by the new Shade Tree Ordinance. Mr. Zaputer has been supplied with a copy of Mr. Wells' report. We respectfully suggest that the most sensible way to proceed now is to take a brief pause, at least until next month's meeting, before acting on the resolution. This would give the HPC sufficient time to read Mr. Wells' report and to seek the input of the municipal arborist and/or the Shade Tree Commission. We believe there are 3 compelling reasons why it would be a mistake for the HPC to forge ahead without taking the time to consider Mr. Wells' report. First, the tree in question is not merely of arboreal interest. It is an important historical element of the Jugtown Historic District. The tree, which is one of 2 on our property, bride and groom sycamores, was planted in approximately 1835, at the time that 41 Harrison Street, formerly known as the Gulick House, was completed. At approximately the same time, 35 Harrison Street, known as the Stephen Scales House, was constructed. Those 2 houses and 2 trees have been in uninterrupted conversation with one another for about 185 years. They form a set piece that anchors the southern end of the Jugtown Historic District. it would be inappropriate for this body to be on record as having approved a plan that would destroy an element of that historic set piece. Especially, I might want to add, when there are options, compelling reason that it has to be right there. Okay, second, this situation arises at this late date because the applicant failed to provide the HPC with the information necessary to make a reasoned decision about the issue at hand. Assuming that what appears online is the complete application, the applicant failed to submit the required, quote, plot plan of property showing location of all existing and proposed structures with relation to surrounding buildings on adjoining properties. Further, and for us important, the applicant failed to inform the HPC of the proximity of this giant sycamore to her property, despite the fact that we informed the applicant's attorney in writing on September 22nd of 2020 that his client needed to, quote, assure that no damage is done to the giant and ancient sycamore tree that is on or near our common property line, end quote. The applicant refused to discuss our concerns with us, despite the fact that the HPC twice directed her to do so, and ultimately the applicant failed to disclose the relevant fact and issues to you all, to the HPC. We feel that the applicant's non-forthcomingness should not be rewarded. Third and last, this body should refrain from adopting the resolution before addressing the tree issue for the sake of administrative order and efficiency. Adoption of the resolution assuredly would trigger an appeal and the premature involvement of various municipal departments. Last week, this is the end. Last week, in advance of this meeting, we asked if we could provide the HPC with Mr. Wells' report and these written comments, but Ms. Kim told us that she could not accept receipt of any documents, but that we would be permitted to read our comments and the entirety of Mr. Wells' report into the record at this meeting. However, in consideration of the commission's time, we request permission to submit to you all Mr. Wells' report, 12 pages, with some supporting photographs in writing for inclusion in the record. We would also be happy to include a copy of these comments if the HPC would find that helpful. Thank you very much for your time and consideration of this matter.
Thank you. I think I need both Ed and Elizabeth to comment because this is a pretty unusual situation. So I guess, Ed, I'll start with you.
Well, Madam Chair, as we said at the outset, the matter has already been considered at length by the board at its last meeting and approved. I certainly respect the statement and Mr. Wells's report, but actually I believe that the venue now shifts over to an appeal. If Mr. Wells's report wants to be submitted to anybody, it should be submitted to the zoning board on an appeal and an argument raised there that the report reflects potential damage to their tree and that the matter that was approved is in violation of the shade tree ordinance. We faced issues like this in the past. You may recall, I'm quite sure we handled an application on Hawthorne Street with Roman Barsky and a demolition and a reconstruction. And the neighbors there had tremendous concerns about the trees on their property next door to this. And there were steps we learned that could be taken to protect the tree on somebody else's property. And there's also ways to feed the tree, provide nutrients, to do different things in order to preserve the tree. I think the applicant is responsible for not killing this tree and taking steps to make sure that the tree is preserved. And the town arborist has already issued an administrative directive that there has to be a plan submitted. So that would be a condition in addition to any conditions that the HPC has already attached. So I think the matter before the HPC has really been exhausted. And the statement just read, which was very clear and Mr. Wells's report, which I'm sure is just as clear, would be the basis for an appeal to the zoning board contesting the approval last month of the HPC approval of this application.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Ed.
May we reply?
So-
May we respond?
Well, I feel like we can't really, you know, we already heard the application, so as far as Ed has advised us, we reached the limit of where we are in this process because we can't legally go back and reopen it. So I
But
think
they failed. Okay. I
the
apologize.
only way to find resolution is to move it forward in its process so that it can be reconsidered, but we're not able to reconsider it. And as he said, we had Mr. Barsky's project, same kind of thing. And also we, I mean, basically the resolution is a document that says what happened last month. So we can't change what happened last month.
Well, the commission rules are governed by the Robert's Rules of Orders, which does allow motions for reconsideration
Plus the fact that the applicant
Before-
failed to,
before a matter is finalized.
and the applicant has failed to do her job. She never came to us and she failed to inform you, both of which we think are reasons why, in fact, according to Robert's Rules of Order, we would ask for reconsideration before we have to deal with zoning and shade tree. We have already let Mr. Zaputer know, as we said, but we do believe that we have, and it is appropriate that we get redress in this venue before moving forward, and that we do think that there are available remedies through Robert's Rules for that to happen.
Well, Madam Chair, respectfully, we're governed by an ordinance which trump Robert's Rules of Order. And the ordinance is clear that once the HPC makes a decision, which it has done, the applicant's not here today to rebut anything that was said. They weren't invited. They didn't have to be here. The matter was concluded last month, and we're now writing down what that approval was. So respectfully, I think the ordinance directs you clearly to what to do in 10 days. File a notice of appeal with the Zoning Board of Adjustment, and they'll take up your arguments.
Sir, we would have been present at last month's meeting, but for the fact that Ms. Brown failed to let us know her plans.
And she had agreed to.
Twice. She had agreed to speak to us first, which is why we felt safe in waiting to hear from her before she would do an end run with you all and leave us out of the loop and leaving us playing catch up. It does not seem fair that she could have done that and left us with these no remedies. It just doesn't seem right. And the issue about Hawthorne was what triggered the new shade tree ordinance last August. So that's another consideration. That
And it was
house,
not a historic house, was
and
it?
it was not a historic house nor a historic tree. And in fact, Mr. Zaputer told me, yes, it was him, that as far as he can tell, this tree is in fact the largest and oldest sycamore in all of Princeton. The other large ones are not actually sycamores, they are plane trees.
Okay.
So I'm done. I'm sorry. I'm done.
All right, so,
That would have had to go through zoning first. I mean, they would have seen all of that. They wouldn't have even entertained it and passed it unless they had seen, I mean, they saw that and they approved it. So, I mean, isn't this more of a, it's more of a zoning issue at this point?
They never saw the tree.
When they wouldn't approve Brook Brown's, because they had to have seen the plot, and the arborist comes in early on. He had to have seen that earlier. I know.
No, I'm
this from
telling you
when
that
I
never
had it,
happened.
We had to say where every tree, every bush was before you could get
It
the
never
approval. So I mean,
It
they
never
must have seen that. That there's
Okay.
zoning initially.
That never happened.
They
That never
wouldn't have
happened.
approved it without having.
all right, Hold on, David
That's just the
Shore.
way- that's just the way-
I cannot pick out this language. I cannot pick out what's
Okay.
being discussed.
It's none of my business part. All right.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Carrie, I'm hearing a delay with your feed, so it's hard for me to understand. David Cohen?
Yeah, I just had a
Oh,
question,
all right.
Ed Schmier. It sounds like the neighbors
David
actually did, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay. It sounds like the neighbors did not receive notice. Does an appearance before HPC require 200 foot radius notice to neighboring property owners?
No,
It doesn't. Okay.
Only for demolition.
only demolition.
All right, well, if that said, I think
There was demolition.
They demolished the chimney on the house already. There has been.
And the porch and the patio.
There's already been demolition on the property that I guess I'm now hearing was not approved.
There was
No-
extensive change. in fact.
Improvements on the existing house were approved under an administrative approval. That was prior to the applicant coming in for the proposed duplex.
And
That was part
includes
of her
demolition?
restoration.
That includes demolition?
Well, the chimney was removed because it was a safety issue. It was separating from the building. There was a section that was a overhang that was over the basement that was really in
Yep.
poor condition. So we did permit that, yes, and that was not even historic. It was just an add-on that came later on to protect it. But that was not part of the duplex design. That was under
And-
the restoration of the existing house.
But to pick up on Mr. Cohen's comment, even if the ordinance does not require notice, in this case, the applicant agreed to give notice before this committee. I mean, on September 21st, her attorney agreed to notify us before they submitted any proposal, and they failed to do so.
Ms. Capizzola, you specifically directed him. You said, I expect you to discuss this with the neighbors before you come back before this board, which gave us great peace until we realized that they completely blew it off.
And Chris Tarr agreed before this board, and I confirmed it confirmed in writing to him on September 22nd. He didn't
So,
stop, he gave us notice.
there is a little bit of confusion. I believe that Mr. Tarr was representing the applicant for a different project, and he just happened to be there and talking on her behalf, but he was actually not part of this application. When she came
That is
before
incorrect.
HPC, well,
He was here as her attorney when we had the last meeting, not the last one, but the one before
The
that. He was
concept.
here representing her in this matter, specifically in this matter.
And he represented to me that he did represent Mrs. Brown.
well,
Correct.
well, I'm not going to get into it, but my understanding was that it was not the case. So
Well, if you look at the meeting minutes, I'm sure it will be clear.
Well, there was no way for us to know that Mr. Tarr's word didn't carry any weight. That's really surprising.
And I believe that the commission did not know
Unfair.
that he was going to move forward as the attorney on that application either, so.
Well, no one ever let us know anything
Well,
at all.
He had a duty to notify us that he was no longer in the case, it seems.
It does feel as though this tree, having been here pushing 200 years, that yes, somebody
Would be interesting.
would be interested, would care about this. Everybody should care, I think. So we will do what do what you tell us to do next, but be assured we are not going away. We are not going to feel in any way good about both a driveway and a house quite significantly larger than the existing house be put between our two houses. We are grandfathered in, so our property line is like 6 feet. And they think because of the new
Full house.
rules of a duplex, that they can come also within 6 feet. Not to mention that both of these houses in a historic district will have attached garages, which is also non-compliant for the Jugtown Historic District. So
Can't argue that now.
there are lots of things that we might have brought up had we been notified and present at the last meeting. But the fact that we failed to be at that meeting is truly not our responsibility. It is theirs.
Madam Chair, I believe Member Shore has his hand up.
Yes.
Hi, everybody. I remember this application being very difficult for us at the time. And Ed's advice and guidance for us tonight notwithstanding, I do feel that because we've talked about landscape and historic trees and worked with tree ordinance and always have a part of our review, including landscape and what's going to be removed and what's going to be planted. I just feel uncomfortable with our situation tonight. And I just want to go on the record saying that. I don't know if we have to approve the resolution because it was approved last month, then I guess I would say that, can we have an additional sentence or something added to the resolution tonight, to what we say, or our approval, that we understand there's conflict and that we are interested in seeing the process go before the Shade Tree Commission or whatever the guidance that Ed just gave us. This is a mess, and I don't feel good about it.
Sorry. Ed, isn't this more of a zoning issue though? Because can you hear me now, guys? Am I clear on this computer? Okay.
Yeah.
Because having gone through this myself with my home, there is no way the zoning board did not look at that plot plan and they want an accounting of every tree on the property, even close by. They want to know if anything is in any way compromised. They are so, conscientious about mature, especially mature trees and even immature trees. I had to replace a dogwood that was no thicker than my wrist. Okay, so and protect it rather, not replace it. So I'm having a little trouble like thinking that the zoning board would approve all this, knowing that this tree was compromised in any way. And maybe we need the other side to hear the full story. Or
Mr. Zapruder told us that in fact his
didn't
understanding.
Mr. Zapruder see the tree before he first saw it after the whole thing was approved, you're saying?
Correct. And he said that his understanding was that the zoning people were the ones who required the tree map, and that's why you all were they were just skating along, believing that you all wouldn't have any jurisdiction over the fact that it's a historic tree. And he said, yeah, no. Well, I don't understand it either.
Well, while we're very hopeful that we'll get the relief that we want from the zoning board, I feel that this is a different situation because the tree itself is a historical element. And so it is appropriate for this board to consider it, and then for zoning to consider it if necessary. But to go forward, to make us go ahead and do if I'm correct that we would be successful before zoning, and the result would be simply that this matter would come back to the HPC again for approval of an acceptable plan. So I feel that by pushing forward today, you're only going to increase administrative inefficiencies.
Again, I have to go with Ed. And Ed, Ed, so given the arguments at hand here, are you changing? Does any of that change anything, or no?
No, I think we cannot tag on something to the resolution based upon what was said this evening. The resolution reflects what the board did last month, and it has to reflect that and that alone. The board does publish its agendas. You can follow the board. If there's a concept plan that might come forward, I would think it would be the responsibility of anybody interested in that plan to follow the agendas and attend the meeting when the matter is being considered by the board, but the commission. But it's already been done, And I think the record needs to be forwarded. If someone intends to appeal, they have the right to appeal under our ordinance. And then everything that is raised this evening about protecting the tree, et cetera, could be raised on an appeal to the zoning board. But I don't believe that HPC has jurisdiction over it any longer. And you either review and approve or don't approve the resolution based upon whether or not it's accurate about what you did last month.
All right, yeah, David Cohen.
I'm just wondering, I totally hear what you're saying, Ed, but if this were to be appealed to the zoning board, I guess the question is whether HPC would want to have any role in the hearing before the zoning board, and whether it would be appropriate for HPC, if it's so desired, to prepare a memo indicating that, you know, when we were considering the application, we didn't have certain pieces of information available that might have influenced the decision, or something like that. Would that also be inappropriate, or?
It would be appropriate. In other appeals that have taken place, we haven't had too many, but some we had, a representative from HPC would attend the board hearing, and you would be given an opportunity to comment on at the hearing. So sure, the HPC could share any information they wanted with the Zoning Board of Adjustment.
Sir, I would like to suggest that the application or that the minutes from the last meeting are not correct because they failed to raise this issue and they failed to do what they were instructed to do by your commission before last meeting. That therefore the application is incomplete and therefore was not correct from the last meeting.
Well, I think that's up to Ms. Kim to say if our application is complete or not. So, I mean, that already happened. But I do think that a memo is important that explains the information that we had not received, that we were made aware of today. So I think the first matter is dealing with the resolution, and the second matter is preparing a memo that explains the discrepancies between the application and the other information that was missing.
Would you like us to submit both our comments and Mr. Wells' report to your board? Should we forward these information to Ms. Kim?
Madam Chair, the answer is no.
To use it as part of
No.
the information for the memo?
I'm not sure if the HPC could conclude that there was something missing or left out from the application. This tree is wholly on the neighbor's property. This tree, according to the information, is set back at least 5 feet from the Brown property. It's not impossible for Ms. Brown to talk to the arborist and to explain what steps would be taken to make sure that this tree is not damaged. It's possible that it can be done like it was done in the Barsky situation. All of the remedial work was done on the neighboring property. As far as I know, that tree still lives. So I don't think we can conclude, or you do a memorandum that says basically an amendment to the resolution that information was not provided to you. The objectors can certainly provide that testimony before the zoning board and say that they believe that that material should have been presented to HPC. But I don't believe HPC can unilaterally decide that you were missing critical information before you decided the case. You could have known about this tree. Your condition could have been that whatever construction is done on the duplex property shall not damage the tree. And then the burden would shift to Brown or anybody else that owned the property to make sure that when they implemented the approved plan, they didn't damage the tree. We also have our arborist administratively on this case. So there's an ordinance that says what you can or can't do with trees. and the arborist will enforce that. And the arborist can go to the zoning board and also talk about the significance of the tree and how he or believes or doesn't believe that it can be protected.
We're
I
not
don't think
suggesting,
we can unilaterally decide that you had information or you were missing information to make an informed decision.
we were
The
not missing the
application is
information.
complete. You
You
had
were.
a full hearing and the board approved it.
Madam Chair?
Yes,
Mr. Purcell, the Princeton's land use engineer, has his hand up. Would you like to
yes.
have him? All right. Jim, I'm going to bring you in as
Uh,
panelist.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay.
Thank you, HPC Board. I want to clarify one thing so that the neighbors are clear on the process, because Mr. Schmierer, this is a variance-free application. This will not be heard in front of the zoning board unless they appeal. This will be reviewed by the zoning officer, and it will be reviewed by me as the land use engineer. And I am fully aware of the constraints that need to be placed on this property when they move forward through the construction permitting process. And Taylor Saputer and I are both fully aware of the importance of the tree next door. So either you can rely that on us, the zoning officer and the land use engineer and the arborist, to make sure that things are done properly, or you can appeal to the zoning board of adjustment and have it heard there. I think that administratively we'll be able to handle this, but it's up to you as to whether or not to move forward with an appeal. So Ed, I just wanted to make sure they were clear that the zoning board's not hearing this unless they appeal your findings.
Jim, I agree with everything you just said.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Thanks, Jim, for coming in.
One last
All right.
question, please. Do we?
Yes.
We must appeal to zoning if we have issues with the current design as put forward. Is that correct? Okay,
Yes.
that's what we do. Thank you, because there's no way they can do this with that design and not kill the tree. So we will appeal to the zoning board. Thank you.
And my question is, what is the objection to our supplying this board with the report of Mr. Wells? I mean, we've already established that someone from the HPC can attend and comment. Why can't we give these, this report to this board as we've given it to Mr. Saputer? And
Well, two reasons. Number one, the HPC record on this matter is closed. The application has been heard, it's been decided, and we have a resolution. Number two, there's nothing HPC could do with the Wells report anyway. You ought to give that to Mr. Purcell. You ought to give that to our arborist, and that would allow them to assist from an administrative point of view whenever construction is proposed to make sure that your tree is not damaged. That is the process.
Okay. So given that we've really fleshed this out, I think it's been very thorough. Is there a motion to approve the resolution?
The Brown, on what? The Brown home?
Yes.
Oh, motion to approve.
Okay. All right. And is there a second? Let's see. I mean, or is there a motion to not approve, or there's I mean, we have a motion to approve. I'm looking for a second. But we have to do something
One or
one
the
way or
other,
the
right?
other. Yeah.
I'll second.
Okay, thank you, Roger. So it's been moved and seconded. Elizabeth, do you want to take the roll?
Of course. Ms.
May I ask a
Capizoli?
question, please?
Oh, yeah, sure, Tom.
In such resolutions as these, do we normally have a discussion period appropriate after the movement and the second?
Not
if you-
unless we want to change the
Change it.
document,
Okay.
like if it's not accurate. Other
Okay.
than that, no.
I have no issues with the resolution. It's a very minor matter as a new member or an alternate. We have the statements, the whereases in the front. Where is this resolution beginning? I don't see a resolved here. And that may be that I'm not familiar with how this works, but where does the resolution actually begin after the whereases?
Now, did you print it out?
Page 3, there's a statement on page 3, midway down, that the HPC voted to approve the application subject to the following conditions.
Okay, so that is the resolved right there. Okay, good. Thank you.
All right. Now, Elizabeth, do you want to take the roll?
Yes. Ms. Capizoli?
Yes.
Mr. Shore? David, you're muted. David, or you're muted.
Yeah, you're muted, David.
There we go.
Did you give a vote?
No, I did not give a vote. I'm very troubled. I'm just going to believe in the process that Ed has taught us. And I guess I'm going along with yes. But the idea is that these neighbors can use this other avenue.
Okay.
Mhm.
Mr. Shatskin?
Yes.
Ms. DeSanzo?
Yes.
Okay.
All right. Well, thank you. I'm appreciate everyone's input, and so we look forward to hearing about the resolution of these issues. Thank you. All right. Now it's we have one more issue before the university comes up. And I just wanted to address 74 Witherspoon Street. Elizabeth, did you have more information on that?
On 74, okay, so Madam Chair, did you want to talk about that now, or did you want
Yeah,
to take the
just-
sequence?
I wanted to talk about that now because we aren't able to, well, are we able to start with the other application?
Yes, so wayfinding, I believe that Michael Laplace is going to present on that. And if the university does not have their representative, which I believe that they will not be, their representative, Ron McCoy, will not be available till 5, but Michael Laplace is going to talk on behalf of the municipality on the wayfinding.
Oh, all right. So let's go ahead with that. Thank you. I'm sorry. So we're sorry about 74. We could talk about that later. So let's move on to the concept review of the wayfinding signs for the municipality of Princeton. And is Michael a panelist?
I've just brought him in, and I'm also going to bring Deanna Stockton in.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Michael, is there anyone else besides you and Deanna that needs to be brought over?
No, not really. Hi, everyone.
Bye.
Basically, what we wanted to talk about tonight, we wanted to get a sense of the Historic Preservation Commission, if we were going in a good direction. The university is quite far along on the development of a new visitor information and wayfinding system. It's going to be a very comprehensive system, including signage that brings you into Princeton, brings you towards the university, helps you navigate around the university. It's going to involve, in addition to signage, more traditional signage, it's going to involve kiosks and interactive aspects of the whole system. And what we thought is, since we've been talking about doing wayfinding for the downtown area and probably for the whole municipality to direct people to public destinations, the library, parks, the municipal complex, parking, places where people, particularly visitors, need to go. We thought it'd be a good idea to coordinate with, since the university is going to be making this major visual investment and impact with their new system, that we should coordinate the design. And what the university was very gracious in agreeing to show you some slides, some of the preliminary design as it's evolving. And what we said to them is, maybe once you get off the campus, it wouldn't look exactly the same, but maybe it would be coordinated in terms of design aspects so that it seems like one system for all of Princeton. So we really do kind of need to see those slides from our guests in order for you to have some feedback and to see what we're talking about. But that's basically what we wanted to accomplish this evening. I'll turn it over to Deanna. She's been working on this longer than I have, if she wants to add anything.
No, I think you covered it pretty well, Michael. I guess one thing we would add is that in addition to kind of the downtown wayfinding and bringing people into the community, it's also going to be interpreted for use in moving people around town in non-vehicular modes. So the idea would be expanding it for bicycle and pedestrian mobility and direction to various locations, perhaps parks and things like that as well.
Yeah, I think a major application would be the park system, since post-consolidation, if you notice, we don't have coordinated signage in the park system. We have some signage left over from when the township had their parks, and the borough has very different signage in all its different former borough parks. So this is a great opportunity to give a unifying element to all of that.
So just a question, is the university going to continue the kind of signs they're using, right down by Washington Road and Faculty? There's quite a bit of signage there.
Right.
Will they be continuing that same style, or?
It's what we've been told is that this is going to be a completely new signage system, because that system, although it's rather attractive, it was small in terms of its scale and not as effective, they felt. People still got lost and weren't directed well. It was, if you recall, like for instance, the directional arrows on the signs are the orange chevron taken from the university seal. And those of us who love Princeton think that was very clever, but it's not a very effective device when you have to make a split-second decision if you're new to Princeton. So it's really going to be a whole new system. I think it's going to have, obviously they're going to be probably staying in the Princeton family of colors with black and maybe some orange and some other things. We'll hear about that. But it's going to be a new signage and information system.
Okay, and then this is going to be all throughout the campus and including Nassau Street?
It'll be on all the major approaches into the university, particularly in town, particularly from Route 1, and I guess 206 and 27, possibly Witherspoon Street and 206. Deanna, did you hear anything else? That's sort of what my understanding.
Yep, I think you've covered it.
Yeah, and so what we thought is, well, Nassau Street we share with the university. They're on one side and the community's on the other. Plus we're north and south of the university's campus. So, why not have a comprehensive wayfinding system that gets you through that whole corridor, as well as the other major corridors, even the Dinky, we don't want to just think about cars, we want to think about people using transit.
So we're trying to be as comprehensive as possible. And the idea was the university's made a rather large investment in terms of design work already. So wouldn't it be great if we piggybacked on some of that design work, and it would save money, it would save the municipality some of that investment.
Right. I had one question, maybe before the university comes in and presents. I know there's a discussion about keeping older street signs that exist, that have survived a lot of different changes in the streetscape. And Deanna, I was wondering, what are the safety rules involving the older street signs? Like, is there a requirement for a certain font size, or like, how do we, if someone in a neighborhood loves their old street sign, can we preserve that, or are you required because of engineering standards to replace all the signs? I mean, how can we keep our old signs?
Well, there's definitely requirements in terms of reflectiveness, the size of the lettering, whether you're using larger font, capital fonts versus small letters. So following the letter of the law, yes, we are required to have the current standards in place, but we also do not have a process to go around replacing existing signs. So if those older signs are still in place, they'll stay in place until there is a need to replace them. I think it would be great if we can do some sort of an interpretive, artistic placement of the signs that they can remain in place, and then just have updated signs installed as necessary for direction of visitors. But yes, the letter of the law is that there are certain requirements of the reflection and the size and the type of fonts for those signs.
Yeah, and I've noticed that there's a lot of the older signs in Witherspoon Jackson that are in pretty good shape and they've been maintained. So that's pretty good, right? Because it's a slower traffic speed in that neighborhood, and it seems like it would function better in that kind of, in a historic district.
So are we saying that we will encourage neighborhoods to hang on to their old signs?
I think we should definitely say that.
Okay, so let's say a sign, the paint is starting to fade a little bit and the sign is looking kind of beat up. Can we refurbish those signs, or is that against this new standard?
Again, you could probably refurbish the sign, but it may not be the only installation that we should have at that location. Maybe we move that sign to a different corner and put in place the updated signage. I can reach out to Public Works. They really have the purview of operating and maintaining street signage. So I can see what ability they have to update those old signs.
Okay, because I know there's interest in keeping the old signs, and I don't want to encourage people to do that, and then they find out that they have to get a new sign anyway.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
We can do a little research on that.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean,
Other
I know
historic
this is
districts have done.
mostly.
I apologize, Tom. You have your hand up and I got in front of you. I apologize.
So this signage is a very interesting idea. There are also other signage efforts being contemplated by outfits like the Crossroads for the American Revolution as they relate to the Princeton battlefield, both for historical interpretation and for wayfinding to the battlefield as a not only historic site, but a tourist destination. Does the university contemplate in this wayfinding signage also to include such sites, historical sites as that? And are they also thinking of including interpretive signboards that would be more than just direction finding, but that would give historic interpretation?
The university, I'm sorry, I might have presented this in a little confusing way. The university is just designing a system to bring people to and from the university. So our idea was to sort of piggyback on their effort and expand it out to greater Princeton. You know, historic sites like the one you just mentioned, the battlefield, sure, why not? Cultural destinations, certainly municipal ones that Deanna and I have spoken about. But the university is pretty much looking at doing it for the university. And our idea was maybe just to, again, piggyback on that effort, maybe save some design funding and end up with a coordinated system. But yes, there is part of the university system that will have kiosks, interactive, pedestrian scaled things. I don't know what to call them exactly. They're still
Maps.
in design that you can walk up to and get more information about buildings. Yeah, they're trying to be real cutting edge about it.
Just to continue, may I ask the board, since I'm new, are there any other signage initiatives under discussion or consideration apart from this, but ones that would be integrative of the community locations?
Well, I just wanted to mention that this board did hear a presentation from the battlefield folk about 2 years ago. And, you know, because it's a state park, Princeton does not have control over what gets done there. We can certainly, you know, if we have a comprehensive system of signs that we're using throughout the municipality for our public and, you know, use, we could share it with the folks from the state park, but it wouldn't be our purview to dictate to them what they should be doing.
We've also had discussions over a couple of different sessions about putting signs designating the various historic districts in the districts, perhaps in concert with street signs. But frankly, I can't remember. I don't think we've ever come to any resolution, unless
Yes.
somebody can correct my memory.
No, you're correct on that, Roger. I think a few years ago, some of the representatives of the Mercer Hill Historic District and engineering had conversations about potentially pairing street name signs with signage that possibly goes over the top of the street name that designates the historic district. And I remember we had conversations about, is the signage more directed to drivers or pedestrians? And if it's drivers, it's very hard to say the name of the historic district in that signage. And if it's for pedestrians, maybe there's a different way of providing that information. And I think that we just kind of ended at that point. It was part of also the Nassau streetscape, because we were looking at changing the color of the background on the street signs to be brown, because that is the common color for cultural sites and parks. And yes, we didn't move beyond that point.
Elizabeth, are the university people available now?
I'm just going to check to see if Ron McCoy is here, because I believe he was the one that had a time conflict.
Julie, if I could just follow up on Deanna's point, you know, I think not to discuss it now, but I think it's something we need to bring up again. Part of our ordinance is to promote the historic nature of the town, and there are people walking around who have no idea they're in a historic district, and I don't think we're really doing our job unless we address that. I mean, we get overwhelmed with applications and getting things approved or disapproved at our meetings, and some of these broader issues just go by the wayside. So I'd like to put that on the radar for some future discussion.
Mhm.
I'd like just to ask a clarifying question again on that particularly good point. Is it within our purview to initiate actions like that rather than just react to proposals? Or would we, for signage like this, need to be reacting to a proposal put to us?
Well, I mean, I think the budget for that kind of thing comes from council. And so I think we would have to, work in concert with council. Yeah, Michael?
Yeah, I was going to jump in and say that it's actually the timing's pretty good on something like this, because later this year, we're hoping to start up the comprehensive updating of the community master plan. And we're going to obviously be talking about historic preservation. And this commission could request that it be a major goal that the historic districts be marked clearly to visitors and to residents, and that kind of information be made, through wayfinding or signage. And then I think when it becomes a master plan goal or objective, then it can also become an action item.
Madam Chair, I have allowed Kristen Applegate to talk. Maybe I didn't see Ron McCoy in the public. Kristen, maybe I missed it. Is he available yet?
Yeah, thanks, Elizabeth. He said he's here. So
Oh, okay.
I just pinged him and he said he is here.
All right.
And
So,
Elric has joined us.
There.
Hey, Eric.
So I'll mute myself, Elizabeth. I don't want to cause any interference.
okay.
You should be able to see Ron now.
All right. I'm gonna, Madam Chair, let me know when you're ready to move on, and I'll bring the university representatives in.
And he has
Oh,
appeared.
Yeah, I see Ron.
Okay. Let me bring everyone in. The university has brought their battalion, so I'm going to bring them all over.
Okay, great. And Ron, it's up to you if you want to talk about wayfinding signs, or if you want to go right into 185 Nassau Street, whatever you want to talk about is fine.
Why don't we get to the 185 Nassau Street presentation?
Ron,
have-
wherever you are, do you swear the testimony you're about to give is the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. Go ahead, please.
Do we have our consultants in the call? Do we have JCFO on the call?
I'm just trying to bring everybody in. You have a large group.
Okay.
We're coming in slowly.
Yes.
And Elizabeth, does everybody have the ability to share screens?
Yes, I made that available.
Okay. Oh, great.
Emily. Let's see. I think I'm missing 2 people. Wait a minute, here's one. Okay. Kristen, I think I got everybody.
All right.
Yes.
So we're shifting gears to 185 Nassau Street. I guess we can choose to address the wayfinding issue later. But Elizabeth, I know you wrote a report on this. Did you want to, maybe go over some general things in your report first?
I'll just do a quick summary because it sounds like Ron actually has a presentation, or the university has a presentation that they have prepared, so I don't want to duplicate it. So I'm just going to, for the record, state that the application is presented by the applicant, which is the trustees of Princeton University. The property is located on block 47.01, lot 1.01, and is located in the E4 zone. The property is also situated among commercial businesses and education and religious institutions. The property does not fall within a local historic district. However, it is identified on the Princeton Master Plan as a recommended historic district, which ties in the central business and the Jugtown district. The commission should consider that this is on the state and national register of historic places as the King's Highway. This application is following the land use law designated under section 40, subsection 55D-110, which permits HPC to be empowered to review this under the recommended district, which is shown in the Princeton master plan. Sorry about that. I think everyone knows the history between the Kings Highway Historic District, where it connects Lawrenceville and Kingston through Princeton. The highway runs through 8 historic districts, 7 which are located within Princeton. Within the architectural survey for 1981, you will note that this building was shown as the first public school that opened in 1856. The site was first seen on the Sanborn map and identified as a model public school in their 1890 map. The reason that it wasn't shown previous to that is because the mapping was not done beyond Washington Street. The building footprint is not the same as you see it on the Sanborn map as compared to today. So it is really unknown if any of the original construction of the building is retained within that one section of the building. The building on 185 as it currently exists was constructed in 1909 in a classical revival style. Although it's not considered outstanding architecture, its limestone trim and its stonework is considered to represent a dominant character of this expression, which is in Princeton, and it ties through to the Princeton Gothic, Collegiate Gothic institutions, and it helps unify these buildings within Princeton itself. When you review the building, it's really seen as 3 components. The west wing, which I'm calling it, is a 1909 building. And then the east wing is a 2.5-story structure. And then there's a middle hyphen link, which is a 2-story lower structure. So the 1909 building was first seen in the 1911 Sanborn map. It's shown as a free, independent standing building. And that's the one that you said was called the model public school. It's 16 bays, 2 gabled projections on each end and symmetrical to itself. The east building is also symmetrical to itself, and it has a 1-bay projection. The noteworthy feature on the site is a wrought iron fence, which is situated immediately behind the public sidewalk. The fence has 3 gates. One which is access through a bluestone walk that goes to the plaza entrance, which is that link piece between the 2 wings. The second is in front of the 1909 building, and the third is on the far east side, which accesses that driveway. So the proposed application obviously is to redesign this open space. It's not only in front of the building, but it's also on the west side of the property. So the university has a vision to transform this to be utilized by the university's program in visual arts and also for the Princeton community. As you can see, there are changes to the space itself. It's been redesigned to incorporate these uses with new planting and new surface material, seating, and lighting. It's intended to accommodate outdoor teaching, temporary student faculty artwork, public performances, receptions, special events, and other social gatherings. So if we go to, I don't want to spend a lot of time because I know that the university is going to talk about all the details. One of the key points within this application is that they have 6 large red oak trees in front of the property and 2 large sugar maples on the west side of the property, which they are intending to preserve. If we go down to the comments section, there's just a few things I want to touch base on. One is obviously the commission very much appreciates the attention that the university has spent and is applying for the protection and preservation for these existing trees. In addition, they are doing some repair on the lower bluestone steps of the 1909 building, which would be appropriately repaired. Some minor items for the applicant to consider regarding their landscape plan is that since the open space is also intended for public use, that there is a certain ground cover that has been proposed that has some concerns with edible toxicity for children and pets. So that might be something for them to consider. Also, there's some plant species that are selected that may attract bees more. That's also something to be considered. In addition to the shrubs, I'd say probably the majority of them are spread through suckers, which is a really efficient way for them to spread, multiply, and mature. However, it can be a maintenance issue, especially if you want to contain it within a certain space. So that's something for the applicant also to consider. I think the main concern that HPC wants to look at is how this property reflects within the recommended historic district in addition to the Kings Highway. Kings Highway is a very linear design, and I know that the HPC has reviewed other applications within this district that they've had to consider, one which is the property across the street, which was the plaza area between the Santander Bank, and the other one was the open space that was in front of the Firestone Library, which I know that that also kind of had an organic design similar to this. However, I know that the commission felt because that was not visible, that was mounted up, that they had no issues. This is visible. I think that that's something that you want to be concerned about and see if this design meets the criteria that the HPC would typically look at as far as appropriateness for the historic site, the building, and the district itself. Another key point I'd like to point out is if the fencing itself, that wrought iron fence, I think it plays a very important role in setting the property. As you can see in Princeton, most of the educational and religious institutions, the buildings are set back a ways. They have a larger front yard, which means they have a lawn area. This is similar case, and the fence really sets up that linearity for the Kings Highway. And to take it away, I think that actually takes away a feature of the historic character for that site. So I'm available for any questions. That's a quick summary.
All right. Thank you, Elizabeth. Mr. DeGrazia, do you want to
No,
start or?
We'll go right in. I just want to thank Elizabeth for her report. As she mentioned, there is this area in front of 185 Nassau Street that's fenced off. It's a grass area. It's certainly underutilized. And the thought here is to, this is a wonderful space to make it part of the community, to make it an integrated space where we could, share exhibits, invite people to come in and eat their ice cream from Thomas Sweet right next door. We saw how successful those little pocket parks are, and this is sort of bringing a real park, not just a little closed off area. So it's an exciting process and project. There's a wonderful story and vision behind it. And I think I'll turn it over to University architect Ron McCoy to take you through the details.
Great, thanks, Christopher. And I'm joined here also by Tatiana Chulika, who's a partner in James Corner Field Operations, and Stone Besso, who's also a sort of associate in the firm as James Corner Field Operations. And they may need to, well, I'm going to turn to Tatiana for sure to talk about some of the details. I don't know if you want to swear them in now. Yes.
If we could, Ron, any of the witnesses for the university, if you swear now that the testimony you're about to give is the truth. Thank you. And when you speak, if you would just introduce yourself as you speak.
Okay.
So everybody's sworn in. Go ahead, Ron.
Great. All right, I'm going to begin. Tatiana, can you share the screen, and I will ask you to advance it and we'll go through it. Perfect. We can see your screen. Now we can see the presentation. So Elizabeth did a great job of introducing the project. Here you see the Classical Revival building from 1909. I'm going to walk through pretty quickly, pausing on a few key points. And then as we get into the actual design, I'm going to ask Tatiana to take over, because we quickly get into some of the details of some of the landscape strategies. So, but I'll probably handle the first 15 or 20 slides. So Tatiana, go ahead to the next one. This is just a locational map. I think everybody knows where we are here. Go ahead to the next one. And then this also puts it into the context a little bit more clearly in terms of the figure ground of existing buildings. One more. And then this shows, as Elizabeth was saying, the location of the site on the edge of the historic district and along the King's Highway. Next, you can keep going. All right, so let's pause here. So this project, I wouldn't say it was born from a conversation with Mayor Limpert, but I think we had some early conversations with the mayor and with some of the leaders of the Lewis Center for the Arts, the Visual Arts Program, about the opportunity for the North Lawn, which is shown here as number 4 in front of 185 Nassau. And the opportunity is to begin to, or to sort of further, I'd say, soften the edge between the university and Nassau Street. And by softening it, it's visually softening it, making the university more welcoming and inviting, and literally providing amenities for the public. So, you know, we have obviously the entrance to the campus in front of Nassau Hall, which is a welcoming entrance, even though it comes through a kind of ceremonial gates. And at number 2, the Firestone Library was a more recent example where we really, when we had to re-roof the green roof on Firestone Library. And so we made it into a park that would literally have steps from Nassau Street, provides benches and relaxing environment for people who are part of the community. Number 3 was one of the earlier renovations of the Zelkova Alley, provided the Zelkova Alley along Nassau Street. And so now here we are at number 4, and you'll see in the lower right the photograph of the landscape. I think it'd be generous to say that that landscape was ever designed. I think it's a resultant of putting the building where it is and then just putting some grass between there and the sidewalk, and then putting the iron fence in. Let's go next. So the point here is to open this up to the community, make it a community resource, enliven the eastern end of Nassau Street with the shops that are right there, as Christopher said, Thomas Sweets and the others, and even the shops are across the street, you know, to provide a kind of amenity, an anchor for the eastern end of Nassau Street. Here you see the original or early photographs of the building. I think a lot of our conversation is going to be around the iron fence. it certainly is part of the original history of the building. It's not a particularly unique piece of the fabric. It's a pretty ordinary fence. Where we've had special fences, say in front of McLean House, we went through great lengths to reconstruct and preserve the McLean fence. I'd say this one is fairly ordinary and not something that we thought it works against the idea of trying to invite the public in. So there's I'll frame here the kind of tension we have. We have a tension between trying to create an opening and welcoming campus, a very public civic space, a community space. And there's one other thing that I do want to introduce here, which is important from the university perspective. We have, I'll share with you that a few years ago, actually coming out of the student protests of 2016, and the results of a trustee commission, which led to the Wilson marker and the renaming of the Woodrow Wilson School. A committee dedicated to what we call issues of campus iconography. That campus iconography committee is now called History and the Sense of Place Committee. And we are trying to tell a more robust history of the university campus through this history and sense of place. So you notice that we have the plaque at Betsy Stockton Garden. We have the plaque talking about the history of slavery on the Princeton campus. And here we are, I think ideally, we would like to, one of the other things that we are interested in as a piece of iconography is that there was an era of segregation in the school system in Princeton. And rather than retain the symbols of that segregation, we also think it's advantageous to eliminate the symbols of that segregation. So eliminating it is symbolically important to talk about how we've advanced in terms of the integration of the community, the respect we have for each other, and the particularly sensitivity of these issues around social justice at this point in time in our history. And so there are multifaceted reasons why we'd like to remove the fence. I think it'd be very interesting to save a piece of the fence, perhaps one of the gates, integrate one of the gates into the fence. I can't promise we could tell a story about it. That requires trustee approval to tell, to put a plaque or a marker there that would tell the story of the history of the site. But certainly I think saving a piece of it and then potentially being able to tell a story about the history of Princeton could be something. So I think the three factors are, one is that it's not a particularly unique piece of historical architecture. We have more dominant pieces and more special pieces. It also prevents the opening of this to public space, and it also has a historical past that, as a piece of iconography, is something that we're trying to deal with and wrestle with as a campus. So let's go ahead. So that'll be I think a lot of conversations that go forward. Here's a view back toward Nassau Street and the historic colonial building across the street. Next. The western side and the back side are not part of this application. We're just putting them in for the eastern side and the back side. Now let's pause here a little bit. What's also important here is that you'll see the, if touch on, you can point to the courtyard, which is really the functional entrance of the building. Yes, that's the functional entrance of the building. The monumental steps, which go from the grand historic entrance, those take you into a gallery space, which is used programmatically by the Lewis Center for the Arts. And they prohibit entrance in there because you're walking right smack dab into the middle of the gallery. So we want to obviously preserve those steps and make them a kind of an amenity, places to sit, places to gather, places to perform, places to watch performances. But we want to relocate the main entrance to the left. Right now, when you approach that building, it's a total mystery. You've got this. We've got this these big steps. You can't go in the big steps. You've got a fence around the site. And it's a kind of mystery. So we want to bring people in through the Hagen Studio. There are a lot of student gallery openings there throughout the year. There are lectures in the James Stewart Film Theater behind the building, and to be able to open the building to the north to embrace the community is a great opportunity. And so that's the kind of reason for this project. Next slide. These are just illustrations of some of the student artwork and the kind of events that happen in the James Stewart Theater. Next. Wrong way. We go forward. Go ahead forward. Okay, so yeah, now we're just looking, I'm sorry, we're looking at some of the different sides of the building. On the right is the rear. There's the sort of north courtyard with the entrance in the middle there, and the west entrance on the left. Next. The Thomas Suite, Seychelles Plaza, and the fire lane is on the west. We want to tighten that space up a little bit. You'll see that that's in the read ahead, the notes that staff presented. We want to make it more of a pedestrian space on the side where the shops are to kind of further enhance the pedestrian experience and the welcoming experience there. This is the fire lane. This is that side of the street currently. Next. So here then is the new design. Here's where I'm going to hand it off to Tatiana to walk through the scheme, and she can talk about the concept. One other thing about the concept that I did want to reiterate, because it comes into play with, again, some of the other comments in the reports. This is a place where the faculty want to be able to allow their students to come out and put up some of their artwork. You know, at the end of every semester, students have sometimes sculpture that they want to exhibit on campus. We try to accommodate them on campus, but if this could be a part of an outdoor classroom, as well as a campus amenity through the artwork that's installed there, that's one of the things we're trying to accomplish. I mentioned that a little bit in the context of some of the commentary about the bollards, the light bollards that we've as part of the plan. Those bollards are, on the one hand, provide safety. We imagine the site to be lit throughout the night. They would be on timers, but also we want to keep the light low so that they don't interfere with artwork that could be installed in this area as a kind of outdoor gallery. So we're just trying to provide the safety and security of lighting, but also put lights in such a way that would compete less with some of the artwork that might want to pop up on the site, which will be unanticipated and will change constantly over time. So with that as a kind of introduction, Tatiana, maybe you can walk us through the details of the landscape strategy. Make sure you're not muted, Tatiana.
Oh. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. So this landscape goes in layers, and we're going to start with the one on Nassau Street. So the sidewalk, as you know, is very narrow here, and we are going to put benches on the sidewalk that we will show you and preserve all three entrances as well. Can you hear me well enough, or should I come?
You're fine. You're fine.
Okay. All right. So what we have done is preserved all the trees, but created a buffer between street activity and school activity. So this is a view showing what we're doing. So you can see here that the sidewalk is narrow. So we push the benches a little bit back between the trees so people can gather on the benches, but enlarged the entrance to make it more welcoming that we were looking at in the photograph earlier. So what does that look like at the street level? So here are the existing trees with the sidewalk. These are the steps that we are preserving, and I'll talk about those later. They're also going to be repaired. That's the main entrance over here, and this is the ice cream shop at the end. Now we're looking at the second layer, which we call the art walk. The art walk is back from the street, a little more private, but very easily accessible from all three entrances. The social space over here is enlarged and improved by the shop. The main entrance has an event lawn because the school often has events and people gather out in the lawn before they go in. There's also the social space here before going into the Hagen Gallery. And these are the steps with a large open space in front so that people can sit, pull up tables and chairs while there are performances or art or anything on the steps. And there are little spaces for art displays and for students' work. So, of course, art outdoors is very fun and temporary. There are like exhibitions that can change all the time. They would really animate the street and create a conversation between the School of Visual Arts and the community. So looking from the shop, the ice cream shop, you know, there are tables and chairs. You can see how the artwork is on the closer to the building, while the sidewalk is away. So we are just doing 2 layers of movement. As we move through, we can see how the spaces are moving closer, and then how the street and the sidewalk is on the outer board, and how we're enlarging spaces, for example, in front of the majestic steps here. Once again, these are very quick sketches. They do not represent the real vegetation or anything. This would be the view from the street to the entrance. The idea is to make it more welcoming than it is today, and to make it possible for people to meet here and gather before an event or during an event or after an event. You can see the steps on the left, and then the art walk, and also the little gathering space in the back with the Hagen Gallery here. The site will be accessible. This part here is slightly over 5%, but the rest is completely flat. These areas with steps are not accessible. These are the paving materials we're thinking of using, and they are resin board gravel in the yellow. And these are areas that are completely porous. And then cast in place concrete with exposed aggregate in it next to it. So this is the resin bound gravel, and it's meant to be completely porous. The furnishing is chosen to be skate resistant. The university has had a lot of issues with skateboards using benches and other surfaces. So we are using a bench which has slats that are opposite to the direction of a skateboard. We're also using these large sort of platform benches, which can be used for sitting, lying around, meeting, but also for displaying art. There are tables and chairs for people to gather, and the traditional Adirondack chair that Princeton has used elsewhere. And you can see that the artwork is lit with short, small bollards, and that's for people using the site in the evenings when there are films, events, and other activities. Different options for the furniture. We are preserving all the existing trees. They are shown in the darker green. And the proposed trees are more understory type trees that will sustain the shade. All the proposed trees are native. So these are some of the trees we're proposing. And the shrub planting is also native plants and fills in against the building mainly. And there are native plants such as clethra, fothergilla, winterberry. The idea of the planting is that it would be interesting in all 4 seasons. This is the planting against the stairs. And then this area is the only one that will have a lawn. Lawns are not very sustainable environments, and they're not great for the trees, because you don't want a lawnmower to go over the roots of it all the time. So the other areas would have ground covers. And these are native ground covers, many of them. And this is the site plan. Thank you.
Great. I think with that, hope that was helpful. I think we're open to conversation and discussion.
Great, thank you. Maybe we can go back to the regular screen.
Right. Yeah, if you can stop sharing so we can all see each other.
Okay, thank you. I know there were concerns about the fence. Does anyone want to comment or on this, on the proposal? Yeah, Tom, you're on mute.
Yes, so this is very interesting, the whole idea. I remember well attending Joe Brown's art sculpture class in this very building when it was just underway, and that's many years ago, so I have a fond association. And yet I agree, from the overall development point of view, very important to try to make it more welcoming from Nassau Street. I'm not myself particularly wedded to the fence. I just wonder if you have a repurposing plan for the fence, integrating it in some other artistic way in the plan or not.
I think that for things like this, we try to repurpose them. So I think keeping a piece of the fence as part of the history would be valuable. And then nothing pops to mind right now about another relocation opportunity, but we're surprised by our ability to put things in our yard in West Windsor and then find great opportunities for them somewhere down the road. So we have done that in the past. The fencing that we have around the roundabout on University Place was repurposed from the fence that was around Prospect House. So we have that. In that case, we found a place to use it that's kind of a gateway moment, but also provides safety, because we wanted to make sure that we ensured the safety. We tried to eliminate students from cutting through that roundabout in a dangerous way. So yeah, we would definitely look for opportunities to repurpose the fence.
Frida, did you have a question?
I do. I was wondering about the benches that are so close to the sidewalk. You know, during summer, how people come into town in groups. I can see little kids, blocking the sidewalk. I think the benches are probably a little too close to the sidewalk. And you have a beautiful oval, the main oval center there. And I'm wondering why you didn't position them around that. And I do understand you're wanting to open the town, open the building to the town, given the history of the building. But I can definitely see obstruction there during the summer months when everybody comes from out of town to eat ice cream at Thomas Sweets. There's 2 benches there now, and it's a little bit of an issue when you have a family of 7 and 8 and little kids running in and out.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering, I think you have enough space. And then I was also thinking about the fact that it's people are there to enjoy the outdoor sculpture.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking maybe the benches should sort of face, maybe not necessarily have the back towards the Nassau Street, but maybe sideways would work better to give people, both the view of the grounds as well as the town. Just a thought.
Yeah, those are good thoughts. I think that we could definitely look at squishing them a little bit further away from Nassau Street to reduce the congestion. As Tatiana said, it is a narrow sidewalk there. I think the curvilinear form is something that is, I think, an important design feature, because again, it's sort of an embracing form, again, a softer, welcoming form, and it starts to kind of create a kind of central space there. So I'd say that we would look at it. I don't know what the impact might have on roots of trees. There's all kinds of things that we don't know. As for the central space, I think that in our early discussions with the Lewis Center for the Arts, they wanted to maintain as much flexibility for artwork and programming in that space as possible. So I think that from a teaching point of view and for maximizing opportunities for the students to display their work, we'd wanted to keep the benches out of that area. So it's again a tension between, making it comfortable and inviting, but also allowing the artwork to find homes without boxing them into too few places. Those are things that come to mind.
Okay, any other questions
Just
about
the-
the new design?
I was going to piggyback on the question of the benches. I mean, I see how you're using them to kind of define the boundary of the space. And I guess I would like some facing out toward the street, but they're not welcoming you in by facing out toward the street. And I'm not sure how you can deal with that. I really appreciate the idea of making this a public space, but it's already a public space, and the new public space is going to be in conflict with the existing public space. If you've ever been there in ice cream season, the 5 months of ice cream season, there are kids running all over that area, using it as a park. The stairs are a wonderful climbing structure, the big grand stairway. Lots of kids go up there. So by taking away the lawn, I understand what you're trying to do, but you're going to be in conflict with the way the space has been used by kids in the public for years and years and years. I mean, it's a de facto use.
Michael, did you have a comment?
Julie, I think actually David had one, and then I'll go after him if that's okay.
Okay.
Okay, well, I'm just picking up on what I was hearing, and talking about layers. I mean, the fence could still be a layer, and then all of this other design. And I like the design. I think the space could be quite pleasant. Although I think that Roger, being a resident of that area of town, is probably more familiar with how it's used. I've certainly driven by when the place is just full of people, and some more amenities would be nice. I think the design is lush, has lots of nice things. I guess I'm troubled by having to lose the fence. It just feels like, the university roars off the campus and gobbles up another piece of historic fabric. This is small fabric, but it's still fabric. And yet at the same time, the designer a few minutes ago said layers and buffer to the street. And I just felt like, why can't it still be outlined with the fence, maybe some larger openings, maybe repositioning some of those posts that are next to the gates, open it up a little bit. But I feel like a design challenge would have been to try and figure out how to incorporate some of that and at least show that as one of the alternative proposals. I think that it's a little, I don't want to use the word arrogant, but it's a little bit like that we have to take this space over. We have to take down things that are historic and part of the district. The fences and the front spaces are mentioned in the Kings Highway district nomination. I just feel like it just an effort to try and figure out how to incorporate that space, maybe opening up the openings a little bit bigger, but retaining the gate posts, putting the gates in an open position. And then we're going to hear later about a whole wayfinding program. I don't understand why that can't be part of this area that says, welcome, come on in, look at our art, sit on our benches, eat your ice cream cone. It just feels like we're kind of doing two different things at once. And it just feels like a solution might have bridged that gap a little bit better. That's my comment.
Michael, I think you were next.
Thank you. I agree completely with David. I think he put it really well. I think I would ask the university to go back and think about how they can incorporate more of the traditional form of this site with what they're trying to create as a new destination. this site is very important to the town. This building was a town landmark for a much longer time than it's been in the university possession, and its presence on Nassau Street is significant. And it's very public presence on Nassau Street is that fence out in front. It's an attractive wrought iron fence, and it's an original element of the site. I get that McKim, Mead and White didn't design it like the Fitz-Randolph Gate, but everything doesn't have to be high design. You know, I mean, this was part of the community. And I was a little, I don't know, Ron, if you want to clarify, it seemed like you were making the point that the fence was somehow a symbol of segregation, and I don't think you want to go there. I mean, it's a school fence. It was to keep the kids out of the street and the street, you know, from the play yard. So let's just be a little careful with weaponizing the history of an ornamental wrought iron fence. The other thing I wanted to ask you about is you were talking about softening the edges of the university along Nassau Street, and you do have the Zelkova Alley by the library. But when the university redid the houses, the Joseph Henry House and the other house and by Chancellor Green, wasn't a new fence put in along there? So, you know, I think we could have a combination of fencing and openings. Let's balance the old and the new here, because this is a really important site.
Well, I thought Frida made a good point that, you know, there's a lot of congestion on that sidewalk, and trying to put too many things right next to the sidewalk could be problematic when it's, you know, in the middle of summer and you've got a million kids sitting on the benches kicking their legs out. Yeah, that maybe there is some use for a separation, just because there is traffic of people walking down the street, and then there's traffic, the people that are hanging out right near there. And I don't know, you don't want really conflict to happen between the people hanging out and the people walking down the sidewalk. Yes, Tom?
On the fence question, I wouldn't mind hearing a bit more from the university as to, on the question of desegregation. I'm not familiar with that, but I'm sensitive to what the story the university wants to tell here and how it relates to the history of the university. This could suggest that the fence in parts could be retained, but as I said, I'm not overly wrought, as it were, with the fence. But the other question I have is about the 1909 building itself, and whether that is a significant structure enough to highlight it more. Does this plan, with the underfoliage up against the 1909, somewhat disguise the building? And so we are going to get a park which has an innovative design, but perhaps at the expense of featuring the 1909 building. I wonder if Mr. McCoy could just talk to us about that.
Well, I would say that I think the report that Elizabeth put out is accurate. It's a classical revival building. It's not a particularly great piece of architecture, but even if it was, I think that architecture and landscape architecture coexist all the time, and that I don't think architecture requires a kind of complete view of the architecture in order for there to be appreciation of the architecture. You know, it's most, you know, on our campus, we don't make a, you know, for example, Beatrix Farrand had a very careful point of trying to use landscape architecture sometimes to frame important features of the architecture, sometimes to act as a complement to the architecture, sometimes to soften the architecture. So there's always a dialogue between the foreground and the architecture. And I think that the low understory flowering trees are a kind of nice way to add a little bit of softening without creating a dominant landscape form in front of the architecture. So I think it's part of that you know, delicate balance between a kind of landscape setting and an architectural setting. I sometimes joke to our architects who have big egos, I say that architecture is a backdrop to landscape, and that the landscape is what's most important. But I do think that finding that balance is what we're trying to do here, and I think it does a fairly good job of that.
Elric?
I've heard a lot of things I agree with. I'm puzzled. I think that having those benches facing traffic, facing parked cars, is exactly what you don't want. I think the fence actually could be a nice division and invite you into a colorful, diverse area. And I find a lot of these things antithetical. I mean, first of all, I don't think the building's particularly well respected, but it says a lawn on a postage stamp sized parcel in the middle of all of this. I can see where you could wander through and look at art, which is fine, but you've talked about performance on the steps or movies or whatever. There's no opportunity for that. The benches have their backs to the school. It makes no sense to me. And again, I agree with this whole concept with the questioning of the concept of segregation. In fact, that school was part of the Princeton plan, which was elemental for thousands of communities around the country, and that's part of its history. The things that you'd want to soften, it seems to me, have to do with areas where you don't have fenestration, like on the building to the west. There are two blank walls on either side of that central gallery area. I like the fact that you can look into the gallery, but those two walls are an opportunity to have some color and to have some foliage. But most important is that ghastly area down by the Thompson building at the end there. Nothing could be better than to try and obscure it with more landscaping. I also think the color and the selection of the ground coverings is terrific. I like the idea of using them, but I can see kids running through them and all of that. The fence could be a wonderful buffer and allow you to be able to see all that color from the street, but not feel like you could penetrate it. And those are delicate plants in many instances, and that would help to ensure their survival. It just seems to me like if you're really serious about performance spaces, you've got to be thinking about areas where people can sit on the lawn or sit on benches focused on the front steps or focused on an area where there might be a screen. I don't see that here at all, and I just think it's busy. It doesn't seem to be compatible in my mind with the building and the space that's there. Enough said.
Are there other suggestions? Frida?
And just a quick comment to agree with what Elric just said. My first reaction when I saw the drawings were to think about the building so extraordinarily linear. And it almost seemed like those curves were forced in there to make it softer. And it's not a criticism, you know, you have your view of the building, but that was my very first instinct until I looked through the entire package and saw the actual photograph of the benches, which were a little more, you know, not as curved as the drawings are. So I think, yes, I don't see how the grounds are married to the building. The grounds are beautiful, and the building, and I know that building well because I got the plans and I used the building for my thesis project. So I know the building well. And coincidentally, my studio is at the Thompson building next door, and that fence is awful. So you might consider, you know, making a softer view from there, but it seems like two totally different projects, really. to me.
Mhm.
So that's pretty much my comment.
I just want
So
to,
Ed, as far as, oh yeah, sure, David.
I just want to emphasize Elric's point among all of his other points that the fence, if it stays, will help those ground cover areas survive much better because there won't be the idea that you could run through them. I mean, if you've done public landscape before, people don't really respect ground plantings, or especially kids don't. And if there's no barrier on one side of them, they are going to run through them. So I think actually keeping the fence benefits your landscape plan to a certain degree, big degree. Okay.
So Ed, is this a regular application where we vote yes or no, or is this a something going on to something else?
Well, I think this is the applicant, Christopher can correct me if I'm wrong, but they filed for site plan approval. I
Yes.
think this is a report and recommendation to
This is
the
going
planning
to the
board, which
planning
will
board.
consider the site plan.
Yes, it's going to the planning board.
We will be
Right.
going to Spravo, I believe, and then the planning board.
Correct.
Okay. So it's a report and recommendation.
Okay, to the planning board. Okay. So,
Okay, a quick question.
Yes,
Just quickly, is there any stormwater management issue here that must be remediated because of all the impervious pavement to be introduced?
I think we could have Tom speak to, the short answer is no, but we could have our engineer just address that.
Hi, I don't know if I have to be sworn in. I didn't swear in before. Tom O'Shea, I swear to tell the truth. I'm
Thank you, Tom.
I partner with Ben Harvey, longtime local civil engineer. Mr. Pyle, the plan for stormwater, we're increasing the impervious surface by about 0.11 acres, 4,800 square feet. And as part of the resin bound binder, that provides a porous medium, and then we have stone storage underneath that. So we're providing for groundwater recharge. We're also improving water quality because we're reducing the size of the drive aisle on the west side of the building, and we're meeting the township requirement. In the event that we have a very large storm, we do have an under drain system that ties into the storm drainage as a way to relieve that water.
all right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So, I mean, my sense is that I think HPC members are interested in improvement to the surrounding area around the building, but maybe not exactly as open as this. I mean, maybe a little bit more direction in terms of creating areas where it's not going to be, there's not going to be conflict between the sidewalk and the grounds, and there's not going to be conflict between the art areas and where people are moving. It seems like there's still some areas to work on in terms of circulation flow, and then a kind of harmony with the building that is still kind of missing. I don't know if there's, yes, Carrie?
Carrie,
You're
you're
on mute.
Sorry. And I believe we all want to keep the fence, don't we?
Yeah, there's a lot of support.
I think we
for
do,
it.
yeah.
Mhm. And maybe there are places for openings, but maybe the fence can really serve a function that's necessary.
And
And-
that's certainly what municipal staff, land use staff was thinking, that, if not all, but most of the fence could be incorporated into the new design, keep that edge along Nassau Street. If the openings need to be more inviting, there must be a creative way to do that, but it's an important part of the site, we thought.
All right, so, I mean, I think that's a major takeaway. On the other hand, I'd like to compliment the selection of trees and plants. I mean, I definitely think it could benefit from more vegetation. I mean, given the fact that it's pretty much just flat dirt and some grass, there's a lot of room for improvement. So, I mean, unless other commission members disagree, I mean, I think we do support some kind of augmentation of the landscape.
Madam Chair, we had someone in the public who wanted to speak. But
Oh, sorry.
She put her hand
Yeah.
down. It was Kip Cherry. Kip, I think you're actually in the meeting now, if you still wanted to speak. Is that okay, Madam Chair?
Yeah, sure.
Let me see. She didn't.
Chip, is your testimony truthful?
Yes, it is.
Thanks.
I don't really have any big comments to make. I think the issue of segregation, I'd like to consult with Shirley Satterfield about that. I know that she attended Nassau Street School after desegregation, and she had some strong feelings about how that all went. So whether we want to make a point of it or not, I would really like to have her opinion on that. And I do have a safety question, because if kids are running around, I always worry about them running into the street, and the fence might serve a purpose on that score. But at the same time, I've often thought of that fence as being a barrier to using the grounds, that sort of a message from the university that we really don't want people running around in the grass. So I like the idea of opening up the space to the public and encouraging the public to use it. And I would move the benches back a bit and allow more for people to be on the benches without being right on the sidewalk. So those are just my comments.
Oh, thank you. Elizabeth, is there anybody else from the public that wants to speak?
I don't see anybody. Justin, do you see anybody?
No, I don't.
I think everyone in the public is in this meeting.
Okay. All right. So, are there any other questions, suggestions? I mean, I think we have enough to put a memo together.
Madam Chair, do you think that we could kind of go down the list of what is the consensus of the commission? Sometimes the Board of Jurisdiction likes to hear what is more unanimous versus just recommendations. So maybe we could break it up into 2 points. One, which is something that the commission really strongly about and makes recommendations to the board, and other ones might be just alternate suggestions for improvements on the application.
Okay. Well, first of all, I think we agree that augmenting the landscape is a positive thing. I mean that adding shrubbery and ornamental trees and perhaps some grasses is a positive thing. So I think we can agree with that. And that opening up the space to the public is a positive thing. Allowing for artwork to be shared with the public, I think, is also an interesting and positive thing. And I think where we differ is basically on using the fence as a way to delineate between the sidewalk and the properties, so that you don't have a conflict with circulation, and also preserving some of the original historic character of the site. And then secondly, I think there's some question about the amount of curvilinear forms that don't necessarily relate to the building. I don't know, does anyone want to add to that?
I would just be a little bit firmer on trying to retain as much fence as possible, understanding that the design may call for some opening of the fence, but I'd like it to say that, you know, retaining it or a good part of it is important.
Okay. Any other points?
I just want to make one point. It's not to argue the point too much, but I'm reminded of the work of one of the greatest 18th century landscape architects, Capability Brown, who, when he inherited the gardening job at Stowe, the great palace in England, it had a classical landscape that he converted to a picturesque landscape. It's enjoyed as one of the most beautiful gardens in the world. There's a whole history of organic, naturalistic, romantic gardens surrounding classical architecture. So I just want to put it out there just as a piece of information that this history goes back to the 18th century.
We have that in Princeton, and a lot of the Notman houses, Guernsey Hall and Marquand Park are a prime example. And people were bringing specimen trees from all over the world in the 1840s to Princeton. Same thing with Prospect, et cetera. I find this, however, to be, if the space is very small and the building it doesn't lend itself, it's very formal by comparison to the asymmetry that Notman, for instance, introduced. I just don't, I don't think that they work together very well.
All right, well, I think,
Can we have
Elizabeth,
some more?
are you,
Okay, no,
is that enough?
can we have some more
for you?
commentary about the trees? I'm not clear if the trees are the additional trees are appreciated or not wanted, or if some version of them is preferable. I heard lots of
Elizabeth, didn't
different.
we have a report from our landscape architect?
Yes.
We did?
Can you reply to Ron on that?
Yes, and it was actually attached to my report. So it is as one of the attachments within there. But I think that Ron is talking more specifically about what comments that HPC has made today and
Right.
how that would be presented within the memo. So I think that some of the comments were that they were concerned about the proportions of it in relationship more specifically to the 1909 building. I don't recall if there was any other comments that might have been related to. Julie?
So you say, so if someone could clarify that the proportion of it in relationship to the 1909 building, that's what I don't understand. Could you explain that a bit more? There's too many, or they're in the wrong places?
I think, I don't recall who made the comment, but I believe the comment was made that they didn't say it was negative, but that they were wondering, was it going to be something that was going to be overpowering the 1909 building? And I believe that it was determined that they felt that it was appropriate, that I think that most of that was probably ornamental trees, because I think that you only actually have one shade tree on your plant list. So I think that the determination, and correct me if I'm wrong, commission member who might have made that comment, that they felt that it was appropriate, that they didn't have any objection to it. I think the only comment that I might have heard might have been from Elric, where he talked about he felt that maybe there should be, there wasn't enough open lawn area for people to linger and use the space as he thought might be used, but Elric, you might want to elaborate on that. I'm just trying to write everything down for the memo as well.
I think one comment that you made, which I liked a lot, was how Beatrice Ferrand, for instance, would frame various viewpoints. And I think that some of that up toward the street, allowing you to get glimpses of the building and some of the activities that are going on in there would be attractive. It would, and the whole notion is to draw people in off the street, off the sidewalk, but not to interrupt the, passersby using that space. But I think that when you see the ornamental, I don't know whether it's American red bud or what it is that I saw up against the windows and whatever, it just looks like a maintenance nightmare, but it also detracts from the appreciation of the structure as an old school building on a part of Princeton's history.
Yeah, Tom?
This is a very amateur view, but you have 3 red oak trees that are prominent, the existing trees. And I don't mean to commit a sacrilege here, but they do block the view of the school. And I'm wondering about the middle of the oak trees, whether that should perhaps be even taken out as a way to open up the space so as to make it more visible from the street. But I can only imagine the opposition that would face. But I just wonder, was it ever considered that why you want to retain the oak trees? Or at least one of them?
Well, the foliage starts quite high. I mean, it's not like it's obscuring anything. It's providing shade.
Julie, I think David's been waiting to.
Yes, David Cohen.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment. I think that one of the members of the commission indicated they thought it would be great to have more plantings to screen the service drive that's on the east side of the building. And I think the plan actually does show a lot of new planting intended to screen that area. So I'm not sure if the person who made the comment had seen that, that part of the planting plan, but I think that's definitely a positive, I think, from the standpoint of, well, I hope from most of the commissioners.
I mean, I think in general, the additional landscape was viewed as a positive. And it was really more about resolving the fence from the sidewalk and the benches and how people would face and how they'd circulate. I
was just responding to the specific question about the planting, which Ron had.
Right.
Elizabeth had asked for some clarification on that, and Ron had asked for some as well. So that's what I was offering.
Okay.
Thanks.
So Elizabeth, do you think that's enough to pull a memo together?
Yeah, so I just want to get a consensus on this. So, and Ed, maybe, you want to go through the list too. Fence, retain as much as possible. Agree that, that opening it up more in places, but still retaining the fence where it is. Perhaps the amount of curvilinear form can be revisited. Now, so the question I have really is about the vegetation, because I mean, I'm hearing Elric's comment, but I'm not sure what the rest of the commission feels about it. I think that and Elric, you clarify, I think that you have no objections necessarily to the general landscape, but you feel as plantings near, more specifically the 1909 building, that you feel that it's really distracting from the architecture, and probably typically those institutions didn't really have that type of foundation planning around there. So I don't know if that's an accurate statement you're making, Elric, and if that is the case, how the rest of the commission members feel about that.
I think it's pretty busy. There's an awful lot going on, and I think it could be simplified a good deal as a central open space. but softened all the way around with the vegetation that you're suggesting. It's just, I think in some cases it's too close to the building, and it would be better if it was pushed back a little bit so that you really felt like it was a haven when you got into that area. And I don't know if I'm explaining myself, but that's the way I feel.
Madam Chair, I'm just wondering if that's a shared view as well from other commission members or not.
I mean, I think that the site can handle quite a lot of new vegetation without being problematic. I think it's too bare right now, and I think there's a lot of room to improve the space with vegetation. So, I mean, my feeling is really the circulation is more of an issue than the vegetation. But I just don't think the vegetation is a problem, as opposed to maybe what's going on closer to the sidewalk. But so I would say, I mean, my feeling is I think there's a lot of room for vegetation, new vegetation, even near the building. But I don't know, maybe others want to weigh in.
Do you frequent this area? I mean, do you go for ice cream? And if you've been there on these busy nights, I live 6 blocks from this area, and I mean, I'm not saying this is a bad thing, it's a good thing. Kids running all over there. You keep talking about like drawing people in. People are drawn in. People are there. Okay, and their kids are running around. They bring their dogs. And if there isn't a band playing, there's some guy who's brought his guitar and he's playing. And you know, it's a very welcoming, inclusive. People just got their ice cream. Kids running around, playing tag, meeting people they never played. Like, you know, it's a very welcoming, open space. I do worry. I like the idea of the vegetation, but will it get stomped on? I don't know. But right now, it's kids and families and dogs and running around, especially on, you know, a pleasant evening, whether it's fall, spring, summer, and you know, with their ice cream cones. So could that get stomped on?
That's a great
possibly?
point.
I don't know, but right now that's what it's used for.
And the other point is that in July and August, a lot of the students have left campus, and it's really just the community that's running around there. So it functions quite differently, let's say in May, than it would in August, just because the number of students around are pretty few and far between in August.
Right.
So I don't know if there's maybe ways to deal with that from a landscape point of view. Because yeah, it's kind of a free-for-all in the middle of the summer.
Right, right.
So I'm wondering if the commission would be supportive of perhaps putting in their memo to shade down some of the landscape areas so they could create a little bit more open area, which also might help with receptions and things like that they plan for their own use versus the public. And maybe that's a happy compromise between the two. I mean, is that something that the commission might consider beneficial? Because I'm just hearing two sides of this part.
Right. I to me, that makes sense, you know, to talk about maybe a little less landscape or adapting for different scenarios.
And that's also a nod to the over a century of this being an open lawn. So from a historic standpoint, it's, you know, seems appropriate from this commission.
Mm-hmm.
Madam Chair, one thing that wasn't discussed is, or wasn't discussed as far as this memo, is the seating that faces Nassau Street and the arch that's opening up, and then the arch seating. What would the commission like to do as far as addressing that?
Well, I think Elric brought it up, and so did Frida, that having the benches facing Nassau Street might interfere with the circulation on the street, and that maybe the focus needs to be towards the building and not towards the street.
Yes.
So proposing to place new benches within the space itself.
Right, like maybe along the interior paths that are being proposed and within the site.
Right.
Okay. There was a comment that I wrote in the report about lighting. I didn't know if that was a concern for HPC. They did, I believe, Mr. McCoy said that they would be on timers. But I'm just wondering, was there a concern that HPC had about the number of bollards there and maybe what the timing might be for those lights that are in operation?
I mean, I didn't have any issue with the lighting.
Rita, is lighting something you're familiar with? I don't know how to measure or talk about lighting.
Yes, no, I'm very familiar with lighting. I looked at the bollards. They look, they seem appropriate. But when it comes to timing, maybe the university can shed some light on timing and what you were thinking. But I think that area is pretty well lit anyway. So the bollards will be for wayfinding, I think, right? Being able to circulate through the beautiful new gardens.
Yeah, it's for the path system, really.
Mm-hmm.
Safety.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay.
Christopher, do you know what the timing might be on those? They're not going to be on timers?
I do not have a time frame in mind. I don't know if anybody, Ron, do you know that? Or
I think we could be flexible. I think we keep our campus lights on all night long, the street lights for safety and security. And I think that was our starting assumption. If there are, shrubs and trees, we wanted it to be a safe environment, but if there's a desire to turn the lights off at a certain time, that's not a problem either.
I'm just not sure what the impact would be at a certain hour. I mean, if people are walking through at midnight or 1 a.m, having the lights there is probably a good thing, and it's not impacting.
Yeah,
it's not really impacting any residential neighborhood or anything like that.
Yeah, I think it definitely would be safer and more secure with the lights on.
Yeah.
And is your photometric actually a 4 range? It's not, it doesn't have a half illumination?
I don't think we've gotten into that level of detail.
Okay, because I see that it's actually on the side that's facing the building, so it's going to project out towards the street.
Then maybe it's on the drawings. I wasn't aware of it. Does the team have any information about the photometric cell? Have we designed the photometric cell for the lights?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, we just placed the
lighting plan.
The lights are bollards, so they're short. They're not going to project to the street. They're just going to light the path.
Well, if the commission doesn't have any issues, then.
Right, so I think we've covered it. And anything else you have in your notes, Elizabeth?
No, how about you, Ed? Any clarification?
Oh, I understand everything.
I like that.
Great. All right. Well, I think that then we'll wrap this up, okay? I really appreciate you guys coming here and allowing us to take a look at it. We really appreciate it.
You're very welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. And thanks, Ed. We really appreciate you too. All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So we're gonna do the wayfinding sign concept later, or
I think they're, Kristen,
next.
are you coming back for the wayfinding for the
We
university?
had not anticipated that you had had time at this, I don't think, once you had it scheduled for 4:15 this afternoon, so I didn't think Ron thought he was the entire part of your presentation. So we're
All
happy
right,
to
well,
come back.
we could do that next month, right?
I can ask Ron if he's available. We were supposed to do it a month ago.
Right.
So I just have to
Right.
check because he had the conflict once it got bumped up today.
Yeah, and Kristen, I'll touch base with Deanna about that as well.
Yeah.
I mean, it
But
was
thank you
never
for
on the
being-
agenda for today. It was the municipalities wayfinding.
No, we were told we were part of that, David.
Oh,
They were going to share some slides of what they've developed with their system to talk about whether that would be a direction that HPC would like the town to go in a coordinated manner. That's what it was.
I do, based on the comments tonight, which I think there's some confusion, I think it would be important for Ron to come back and talk about what we are thinking about.
Okay.
All right.
Would it make any sense for us to see anything in advance of your coming in, or?
I'm sorry?
Would it make any sense for us to see any samples before you come in?
Yeah, I think actually, Mr. Shatsky, I think that's actually even further ahead than we are. You know,
Okay.
we were coming and talking, we had been asked to come and talk in a more conceptual way. You know, we had shared some of our you know, I'd say use the much used term 30,000 foot, you know, level thinking. So there's no just, you know, specific designs per se, I think. at this
Okay,
point.
no, just curious.
Good to get your input early, I think, is what the idea was.
So Kristen, our meeting in March is March 15th, if you want to talk to Ron.
Okay, is there any chance you could put him on at the start of a meeting rather than?
Julie, we could put him
Yeah.
on early, right? If we had anything, we don't have any resolutions because this is just a memo. So
Yeah.
that could probably be one of the first things, probably after minutes, if we had
Okay,
minutes.
so
Right.
that's a 4 o'clock start.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, I'll check with him right away to see if he's available.
Okay,
I know
great.
the- I know the
Okay, thank you.
presentation is made. Okay, March 15, 4 p.m.
That way you can come before Hillier.
Oh,
He switches again.
You don't want to
Yeah.
come after Bob. Bob is, you know, he's so eloquent. You never, you gotta watch who you come after. All right, so I'll check with Ron, and
Okay.
hopefully that date will work for him. Thank you. And sorry it didn't work out today.
Oh, that's okay. Thank you for coming in. Thanks.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Have a good night, everyone.
Bye.
You too.
Thanks. So the only other matter is 74 Witherspoon. I don't know if Elric, you had more to say on the Momo building. I mean,
I thought- Were you gonna show the pictures, Elizabeth, or not?
I can show them. Let me see. I think I had them ready,
I think
just
all
in
I need to
case.
do is, because I don't really know much more than the fact that there's a strong intention to remove that building. And I wanted to, it seems to me like it anchors that area, and it's not only on the periphery of the Witherspoon Jackson area, through the association with the Toto family. It represents a family-owned business that was there for a long period of time, that represented the Italian portion of the population in Witherspoon Jackson as well.
Justin, do you by any chance know what the proposal is for that property?
For 74 Witherspoon?
Yes, that's the Momo building?
I'm not familiar. I've just heard that it, just tonight that it was going to be on.
Okay, so you haven't seen anything in the office?
No, I have not.
Okay,
Do you have those pictures?
I'm looking.
Yeah. Just that, looking at the old maps, for instance, obviously, Jackson Street itself disappeared with the, when Paul Robeson Place, then called Avalon Place, was run through from Hodge Road to Wiggins. But beyond all that, that whole area which became Palmer Square, all those buildings are gone. And with the removal, this is the last building left. All the buildings on Holefish that were there when I was a kid are gone. And it establishes or it reinforces the scale that exists along Witherspoon Street, seems to me. And it's it's part of a gateway really to the rest of Witherspoon Street going down to Valley Road.
That's an interesting point, and I would add to it that there actually is a surviving segment of Jackson. It's that little portion right next to the building on the corner, which is now marked on the tax map as a municipal park. But that was actually the Jackson right of way, a little portion.
That's correct. When you came down Wiggins Street, there was a really wonderful mansard house straight in front of you, which is where the street is now.
Elric, which one do you want to see?
Well, I thought if you could start with a map, we could put it in context.
Okay, hold on, let me see, because it's actually, I have the map that is the old map.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Okay, hold on, let me get that then.
I'm sorry. If I knew how to do this, I'd put them on myself.
Oh, no worries.
By the way, I went through the Sanborn maps, and it's shown back to 1890 as a grocery. The number changed. It was number 58 until 1911.
Can you see this?
Yeah.
Is this the one, Elric?
It'll do.
I'll keep looking.
Well, if you look at the intersection of Nassau and Witherspoon Street, you'll see, for instance, even you can see where the pond was that feeds Harry's Brook, that was right in there. And then even when this map was made, the gasworks had already been established beside that, where the park is now, basically where the park is now for Albert Hines. The one picture I had where it says A.D. Rittenhouse, that was Dr. Wiggins' 18th century house, which is where the name for the lane comes from. You can see Holefish Street in those days was the term. Everything from Holefish up to the hotels on Nassau Street was a warren of livery stables and secondary buildings associated with the hostelries along the street. But all those buildings, and there was a jail. You can see you're right in the middle of a stone jail, which was where inebriated university students quite often found themselves on Saturday nights. And then all of Jackson Street, and those were some of the oldest houses in the Witherspoon Jackson area because they were closest to Nassau Street. Anyway, all of that was wiped out. All of those buildings along Nassau Street, all the way down to Green Street, or to the Jackson Street side of it, those are all gone except for that one building. And it's right on it's right on the corner of Jackson and Witherspoon.
Yeah.
I hate to ask the
Photographs
question.
Can you see my cursor?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Elric, when we say that these buildings were lost, I think I probably know what the history is, but was it a fire or a storm, or was it planning?
Well, they were lost in several different stages. I mean, the major ones that we're all aware of is the fact that Palmer Square ran roughshod across a whole domestic landscape.
Okay.
But it wasn't the end of it, because just in, you know, when Avalon came through and Jackson Street was eliminated, all of that went as well. And since then, the buildings along Holefish, including the Playhouse from my youth, all of those were eliminated for that big block of buildings. Then those $1 million townhouses went in. So it's completely transformed. But that one building, there are quite a few buildings along Witherspoon Street up to Nassau, which are actually really old. Many of them, at least 4 of them I can think of, were raised a story and stores put underneath. Some of them are Stedman buildings. But that building, I think, establishes that or reinforces that scale that is
Almost gone.
lost with those apartments and that big bulky building on Holefish.
Do you want a different photograph?
Yeah, I mean, the one with all the people in front of it is really quite wonderful.
Oh, okay, let me see that one. Yep. Hold on.
I like the backdrop, Roger. Great.
The red circle is my house, 1902.
Okay, let's see.
Oh, well,
Not as old as yours, David.
The Historical Society has more photographs than the ones that I had, including the Toto's wedding in 1939, I think. It's quite wonderful. There you go.
Okay.
So you can see the way it looked. I think in 1879 is the one on the top, and you can see the way it looked probably about 1970 below that. And they raised the roof line on the lower side of the building. The doorway is intact. That's all still there. And there are other aspects from this which survive. And the story, the first story already in 140 years ago, 150 years ago, they had taken what probably was the kitchen wing and turned that into a grocery store. I think it was Sullivan's at that time. Okay, well, that's the gist of it, and I just think we should advocate for its retention. If something went up between that and the corner of Robeson, if it was set back a bit, it wouldn't bother me particularly. But I think that the building itself ought to be maintained.
So I think that the commission members who were here when we did the Witherspoon Jackson Historic District designation recall that when Weiss Preservation did the report, that there were a few properties on this side of Paul Robeson that they had identified. And this, I believe, was one of them. But at the time, the commission felt that they wanted to make it a district that was approved, and that maybe less controversy would occur with this, and it would be kind of contained on that side. Not that there weren't properties over here, but that they thought that maybe in the future they could have been picked up as part of an extension of the central business district, because I think there was also a property down on Spring Street too that was probably included as well. So I don't know if there's something that the commission was thinking about as far as how they might be able to be supportive of retaining this building. I assume that it's going to be going to the planning board. And I think that probably HPC should think about how would be the best way for them to kind of support their preservation of this building, since it's not in a district.
I have very little. I don't go out to eat, but so I've only been to Mediterranean once, and I don't I don't know all, and I've never been to the bread company, but the Momos themselves were looking at some barns a few years ago as a place where they could possibly have a restaurant, sort of field to table restaurant. And I found them very open to notions of preservation and accommodation. And I think maybe if it was possible to be less public about this and more and just ask what their intentions are and make our viewpoint known and see whether or not those two potentially contradictory notions could be brought together into a better scheme for both of us.
All right,
If it's
well,
of
let's
any-
use our channels to try to, see what we can find out.
I would just
Elizabeth,
say
do you
that Raoul Momo is very historically minded. The Princeton Battlefield Society honored him with their Mercer Oak Award for his efforts on behalf of history. So I think he'd be receptive to that. And if I can play any intercessory role, I'd be happy to do that, although others I'm sure know him well as well.
On the other hand, excuse me, I think Michael Laplace indicated that they'd had some discussions already and that they were not open for saving the facade or other possibilities. I don't know if Michael's still on the line, but that was the
Yes,
impression. That's
I
the
am
impression
still
I
here.
got. But that's the impression I got from something you said, perhaps at the last meeting or meeting before, the last time we discussed this, that they seem to have their minds made up.
Michael, did you have anything that you wanted to share?
Friends, I have to excuse myself to join another board meeting, so it's
Okay.
been very good to be with you. Thank you so much.
All right, thanks,
you.
Tom.
Take
Thank
care.
you.
I think we lost Michael.
Yeah. Oh,
He's
can
here.
we go back to the main screen?
I'm sorry, yes.
I'm sorry, the sound went out on me. I don't know when I cut out, but basically, we urge them to preserve the building or incorporate it into the new development. And they really want to maximize the density on the site. But I still think it's worth talking to them if you all have a relationship with, the ownership. Let's try, because it certainly is a wonderful building.
Michael, do they want to demolish it to build something larger for their still the same use? Or
They want to do a mixed use building with, I believe, some commercial space on the first floor. And I guess 3 levels of retail above, of residential above.
3 levels of residential?
Yep.
Okay, and do they want to do that without variances? Are they trying to do it without variances or?
Yes.
Okay. And do you know, can they do it without variances?
Well, I think they were pretty much, that's what they were talking to us about. I don't know whether it was, I think it was 3 stories above grade. So it might have been some retail space on the first floor and then the rest of it residential. But it seemed to fit the initial zoning, requirements that we know of. It was a very preliminary sketch they showed us.
Okay.
But it didn't involve any preservation or incorporating any of the old building.
Well, it sounds like Tom will reach out to Raul. And I thought Shirley might have a connection with the Momos as well.
And I can try.
Okay, great. All right. Well, thanks for bringing that up. And, we should keep tabs of what's going on. Does anyone have any other reports or announcements or anything? Because I think that's it.
I don't have
Okay.
anything, Madam Chair.
So is there a motion to adjourn? Okay, thanks, David.
Second.
Okay, Roger seconded. All in favor? Thank you guys so much for being here. We'll see you on the 15th.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.